Black World Studios, where we talk about Indiana politics from the left side of things. Well, during the course of my rant today, I am going to have the one and only Jesse Jackson up on my screen today. RIP to, one of the folks that paved the way for many of us who are in this political life. I am going to, at the end of the show, I'm going to definitely highlight him and his history-making efforts into helping, democratize democracy, because it ain't always been that way. But before I get to him, that'll be at the end of the show, so hang around for that. Y'all know me. I got a rant. So let's talk about what's going on in the State House. Y'all know this is a short session, so there's a lot of bills that have gone from one chamber to the other. But the Indiana Capitol Chronicle reports a flurry of bills earned third reading approval. Lawmakers attempt to crack down on doxing, proposed after more than a dozen members reported redistricting-related threats last year, left the House on a unanimous 88-0 vote. Senate Bill 140 works doxing into the state's intimidation statute. Posting someone's personal information to a social media platform with ill intent would be a Class A misdemeanor, but could be a felony in some cases, like if the target is a member of the General Assembly. Defendants accused of crimes could have to be in the courtroom while victims deliver impact statements under another bill approved in the House on Tuesday. Right now, those can be delivered to an empty chair, which families testified offers no closure. See, that's what y'all keyboard warriors and bullies get. So if you out here doxing people, y'all about to face some time. So get over yourself. Senate Bill 9, which has exemptions for defendants who pose security risks or cause major disruptions, was approved in unanimous 90-0 vote. Across the State House, the Senate approved an all-out ban on digital currency kiosks or cryptocurrency ATMs in a unanimous 45-0 vote. So you're not going to be able to go to a kiosk and buy your cryptos if this gets signed. And then House Bill 1116 began as an attempt to regulate the kiosks amid reports of devastating scams, but was amended in the committee last week after the panel's chair, Senator Scott Baldwin of Noblesville, declared he saw no legitimate reason for the machines. And finally, heading Bronze Way is a ban on ranked choice voting. Okay, so this is for all my progressives out there that really want to see ranked choice voting in Indiana. Under that system, voters rank the candidates in order of preference. If no candidate wins a majority of ballots on which they are listed as the top choice, the other rankings are used to determine the winner. SB 12 crossed the finish line with the 58-30 vote in the House, largely along party lines. Ranked choice voting isn't currently used in Indiana. So, since we don't have any ballot measures in Indiana, and the State House can determine what bills get passed and what bills don't, that means this no ranked choice bill is going to the governor's desk to be signed. I know I've seen a lot of posts out there for people saying we want ranked choice. Well, guess what? You're not getting it. You're not getting it. And not unless you show up at the polls in May and in November and flip some seats in the General Assembly. Now, we got all 25 Senate seats with a Democrat on the ballot. And we've got 91. We got 91 of the House seats on the ballot. So the only way to get that ranked choice voting now is to flip seats and overturn this law through new laws. We be waiting till things happen before we show up, but in this case, it's a done deal. All right. News from the state.com reports A broad effort to curb local regulation and increase the state's housing supply, a top priority for House Republicans, squeaked out of the Senate committee Wednesday after a razor-thin vote and a chorus of warnings from lawmakers in both parties that the bill still falls short and could overreach into local decision-making. The Senate Judiciary Committee voted 6-5 to send House Bill 1001 to the full Senate, with multiple changes following the 2 hours of debate. Public testimony and lawmaker discussions both expose ongoing unease over the bill's reach, its impact on local control, and whether it would actually make housing more affordable. All three Democrats on the committee, Senator Rodney Pohl, Lonnie Randolph, and Greg Taylor, voted no, joined by Republican Senators Jim Buck and Sue Glick. I do not taking away local control, said Glick of LaGrange. I think one size fits all does not fit in this case. I want to see the communities have decision-making capacity. The deciding vote came from Senator Aaron Freeman, a Republican from Indianapolis. He pointed to the past legislation debates, including over public transit in Marion County, where lawmakers rejected state intervention in the name of local authority. House Bill 1001, authored by Representative Doug Miller of Elkhart, is designed to address Indiana's housing shortage by limiting local zoning rules, streamlining overall approvals, and expanding the type of residential development must be allowed without public hearing unless a city or county formally opts out. The bill previously passed the House 76-15. Miller has repeatedly argued that unnecessary regulations are driving up housing costs and suppressing new construction, and studies show a growing affordability gap across the state. Indiana needs about 50,000 homes today. We had to put a stake in the ground and say we need to do this now. Y'all, listen, I'm troubled by this bill because every time I see someone say they want to deregulate and not have any zoning hearings on housing development for the sake of adding more housing, I think about that condo building that collapsed in Florida. The building was built, and we already know that Florida and Indiana are pretty much in line with each other when it comes to how they do business. And so I asked the question, what could possibly go wrong if the state intervenes with localities and municipalities' ability to set regulatory control over housing? Buildings could collapse. I'm not being hyperbolic. We've seen buildings collapse with humans inside of them. I don't like this bill. I think Senator Glick is right. A one size does not fit all. I have a feeling that there are going to be some catastrophes once developers understand that they can then cut costs by cutting on quality. Because, you know, they will build into their budget lawsuit costs. I think this is bad, especially when you don't get when we as the people don't get the opportunity to have a say in those rezoning conversations. This government is about the people. And when you say organizations and corporations can come in and just do whatever they want without any oversight, y'all, I know some people think regulations can be burdensome. I get that. But every time Republicans write deregulatory legislation, something bad always happens. It just go down through history. Something bad, whether it's in the financial markets, whether it's in transportation, whether it's in infrastructure, something always bad happens when we deregulate. Look it up. I promise you, that's what happens. This bill just drives me nuts. It goes along with the bill that they got out there right now that basically says data centers can build data centers on bad farmland without any voter constituency input. This is what's happening at the State House. Okay. The Purdue Exponent reports, and I wanted to read this particular article because it's talking to our young people. Days after Purdue administrators and Tippecanoe County election officials walked student leaders through voter registration rules ahead of the May 5th primary, an elections bill moving through the Indiana State House would shorten the state's in-person early voting timeline and change how counties handle scanned paper ballots. Two changes that could directly affect how students plan their voting were slipped into House Bill 1359 as amended without public input. The bill reduces the period for in-person absentee voting, commonly called early voting, at a circuit court's clerk's office or satellite office from 28 days to 16 days. The period would end at noon the day before Election Day, according to the bill's digest and text. Practically, if enacted and applied to a given election, it would mean fewer days for students to vote early in person, raising the stake on planning ahead, especially for students who rely on early voting because of class schedules, work, or travel. HB 1359's digest says it specifies a process allowing certain counties to scan voted optical scan ballot cards during their early voting periods and on election day without using secrecy envelopes with related confirming changes. Under the bill's structure, counties would have to adopt specific procedures and have voting systems capable of retracting a scanned ballot in situations where a voter is later found to be disqualified or a ballot cannot be counted. The bill also outlined rules for the process on the scanned ballot cards. They may be scanned beginning on the first day of early voting before the absentee voter board, but may not be tabulated before Election Day. Previously scanned ballots must be retracted if they are disqualified from voting for any reason said within the bill. At the Purdue meeting, officials repeatedly stressed process and timing, registering correctly, understanding deadlines, and avoiding confusion between nonpartisan registration and partisan candidate advocacy. If HB 1359's shortened early voting window takes effect for elections relevant to student voters, it would narrow the cushion students currently have to vote early in person, making the Purdue's forms "do it correctly and don't wait" message more consequential for busy students. So I know I read that from the student newspaper, but think about this, y'all. This doesn't just apply to students at Purdue. It applies to every student who is going to school anywhere in Indiana, whether they live on campus or they don't, if they have a job or they don't. Oh, I'm sorry, even to those who are not in school. This applies to you too. They are looking to short the 28-day window down to 16. Now, here's the crazy part about this bill. They tried to do the same thing last year. And they had public testimony, and it was struck down because people showed up and said, nah, don't go cutting our window to vote. But this time, they snuck it in without any public comment, and they had hoped that they could get away with it. See, y'all, this is sneaky underhandedness mess. This is what this is. This is these people who are supposed to represent us not doing the work of making sure that we are fully aware and have an opportunity to speak on any particular piece of legislation they introduce. Basically, when they slipped this in to the bill, they said, we really don't give a dang what you think about it. We don't care if you want to have 28 days of early voting. We do not care. Remember when they about lost their minds? When Senator Bray said, I don't have enough votes for redistricting, so we're just not going to do it. And everyone on the right lost their collective minds talking about bring it to the floor. We need to have a vote. We want to talk about it. The hypocrisy of Republicans is sickening. These clowns are on some mess. And they keep doing it, and they keep showing us who they are and that they do not care what you think, what I think. They just don't care. They do not care. And they prove it to us over and over and over again. Y'all, please start registering to vote. Make sure, check your registration, because we know Diego Morales sent our voter information into DC. So we don't know what they're doing with it. We have no idea what is happening with our voter information in the hands of this corrupt, mafia-style administration. We see that they are doing everything that they possibly can to disenfranchise us, Republicans do, because they can't run on their policies. They can't convince voters that tariffs that are putting our farmers in harm's way are good. They can't tell us that these ICE detention centers are good. They cannot tell us that shooting protesters execution style on the streets of Minneapolis are good. So what do? They make it harder for you to vote, and they don't even tell you that they're doing it. Y'all, let's get registered. Let's get fired up, and let's understand why we show up to do this work. We show up to do this work so that we can end these policies that are harmful to humans. This is why we do the work. It's about the policies. That's my rant. Democrats, are you looking for an affordable digital content creation solution? Then look no further than Black Pearl IT Solutions and Black Pearl Studios. Indiana's own Dana Black is providing many of the communication wraparound services any Democratic organization needs. No matter the size of the budget, Indiana's own and Black Pearl Studios have you covered. Just scan the QR code or visit www.blackpearl-its.com. All right. I get a little fired up when the State House is doing really bad stuff. And that is why it is so important that we have candidates at every level that are on the ballot. Y'all, tonight I have another candidate that is running to change things in our State House. Y'all, give it up for my guest tonight, Pepper Snyder, who is running for the State House District 50. Pepper, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Love it. Hey, was there anything in
today?
Was there anything in my rant that you wanted to talk about?
The voting thing. I would make the point that one of the reasons that I used to be a libertarian. Some people will point that out a lot, but one of the reasons that I started thinking maybe I'm not a libertarian is I had read a book from a pretty big libertarian thinker, and he had pointed out that the more people vote, the more the less power that they have. And that's the goal with Republicans. Republicans know that they lose when people show up to vote. I mean, look at what happened with Obama in back in 2008.
Right.
Students showed up to vote. Students were on fire for Obama. And that's what happens when people get fired up. The more people vote, the less that Republicans win. They know that. And people are very fired up right now. and they are very worried about what's going to happen here in a year,
I
less
know.
than a year.
I know. And it just drives me nuts that they actually just slipped that thing in without any public comment. I mean, they know it's no good. They know this is
Right.
a bad move. It just drives me absolutely bonkers to think that these people swear they got integrity, and then they go and do some crazy mess like that. We were before we came on came live today. I read an article about an ICE detainee. What is his name? I want to make sure I get it here. An ICE detainee at the Miami Correctional Facility had died. His name was Lorth Sim. And
Right.
we have this ICE thing running around and people are dying. It broke my heart to read it because does his family know that he's passed on? Nobody seems to know what has happened to him up in Miami. We already know where, Congress folks and senators have gone to these ICE detentions in deplorable conditions. Before we dive into your campaign, I wanted to talk to you about this because I know the average human is disgusted with this type of behavior, except for those that believe in, white supremacy and white Christian nationalism. Talk to me about when you read this article, because you had mentioned you had already read it yesterday. Talk to me about how it made you feel and your thoughts on this ICE mess.
Horrified. I don't think history will remember this point in our history kindly. I think that, there was another story of a baby being deported who was very, very sick, and the baby had been in the hospital. The baby had been non-responsive at some point. And they deported this child while the child was sick. The family had about $120 to their name. It's not human. It's inhumane. It's horrifying to think that we are going to look back on this and just be horrified by what we've done with our tax dollars again. And I don't think we ever learned from our mistakes. We just continue to make new ones. We are violating human rights right now. We've got children detained. We've got, I think this gentleman that died was number 7. Yes. I believe he said, yeah. Number 7. How many more are we gonna let this happen to before we, start letting people in there and making sure these people are being fed and given their medication and treated humanely?
Yeah, he was 59. So as someone who's 55, I know he should have been on, he probably had some medications that he was taking, right?
Right.
And
people like to make the case that, these were violent criminals, but that's just not usually the case. I think that I read a study that was like 14% of the people that they have actually detained have had violent criminal records. And not only that, even people that have violent criminal records still have rights in the United States. They still have a due process that they get just like everybody else. And we still have to respect that. Because when we stop respecting those people who are violent and who are dealing drugs to our kids, when we stop respecting those rights, and that opens up government's door to stop respecting our rights for those of us that are not violent.
Well, and see, here's the thing. The WFII reports the 59-year-old Sims came to the United States as a refugee and became a lawful permanent resident in the 1980s. In 2006, an immigration judge ordered his removal from the country and back to Cambodia following several convictions. So he was here illegal, but it doesn't say that he actually committed any crimes.
Right.
It drives me nuts because we've seen this behavior before, but we don't want to attribute it to anything. But I mean, honestly, is this any different than, when we were treating enslaved Africans? Is it any different than when we treated our interned Japanese residents? I mean, like you said, we haven't learned from our history.
Right.
Right. All right, I'm excited because it sounds like you're about as passionate about these issues as I am. So let's get into it. Pepper, tell people who you are and where you come from.
Well, I come from Pepper Snyder. I'm married to, a lot of people know my husband, Gary. He's an agitator on the social media, and
Do I know this, Gary? Let me think.
he's a little out there, but he we I'm from a little area, a little county called Warren County. It's not a small county, but it's probably a lot of poverty in that area. I went to Seeger High School over by West Lafayette, and I grew up in a little town called Pine Village. It's about
Okay.
300 people there, and met my husband when I was in college, and then we got married, and he had custody of his three daughters. We had, for some crazy reason, we had four more,
Oh my.
and I ended up with our youngest. She had some special needs,
Mhm.
and I had to quit college at that point and take care of her and focus on her for a few years and making sure she gets the intervention and the needs that she needed. And we spent a lot of time in doctor's offices and navigating deductibles and costs and all that with her. And that kind of changed my opinion on healthcare in general,
Mhm.
was because it put us in the poorhouse a lot.
Mhm.
It was rough. She's now getting ready to graduate high school, and we moved up here to Huntington, gosh, about 2007, I believe. And we've been up here since. I fell in love with this area. There's a state park up here, and we actually live between a reservoir and this Salamone over there. We have eagles flying everywhere. I love
Mhm.
it up here. I love the people up here. Um, but the reason I decided to run, I was raised a Republican, and very, very strong Republican. A lot of my family members are big Trump people.
Yes.
Um, I started questioning a lot of things with what I was raised with, politics wise, probably around 2012. And I found my place in the Libertarian Party. I gave a few speeches. They asked me to do a speech at the 2015 convention about how to get women into the Libertarian Party because women were not very active in the Libertarian Party. One of the things I focused on was how we can't pull the rug out from people. You can't tell a single mom that you're going to take away her food stamps and
Mhm.
things like that, because people rely on that and to survive, to feed their kids that they bring into the world. um a lot of people didn't like that. I started questioning a lot of things with libertarianism at around that time, shortly after I ran for office as a libertarian. But I found myself constantly not only being told, no, you're not a libertarian, you're a Democrat. You're a Democrat. I've been accused of being a socialist, which I don't understand why, but um, I think that I started, you know, thinking about the different ways that I grew up. I grew up on social services. I grew up on food stamps. I grew up on TANF. I mean, that was how I was raised, because my mom didn't have, it was very, very big poverty area out there. There were not a
Mhm.
lot of job opportunities. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 13. My dad was in and out, and she struggled financially, my mom, and she had to rely on social services
Mhm.
to feed us. And when you become an adult and you start thinking about all those different ways that, how in the world can I say that it's not okay for someone to feed their kids like how my mom fed me
Right.
sometimes?
Right.
And so just kind of growing up, I found myself in the Democrat Party, and that's the biggest thing. I just kind of grew up and started thinking about how life actually is, rather than how we want it to be. None of us want everyone on social services and
Right.
things like that, but we have to understand that sometimes people need that. And there was a lot going on with the Libertarian Party. I think Trumpism took them over pretty well at the national level. And they were started doing things like questioning age of consent laws and things
What?
like that. And I think that was just the last straw for me. I was just done at that point. There was no, and plus once the Democrats kind of took over the legalization issue with cannabis, I could not think of any reason to stay.
I understand.
And so I made the jump and decided to run for office because of the costs are just insane. Utilities, our utility bills increase. I recently spoke to a woman who her utilities went from $120 a month, and she's further up north near where the data center is, and her utility bill jumped up to almost $900, which was more than her mortgage.
Okay, wait, you got to stop. We got to put a pause. You said she was paying $120?
Yeah.
And do you I'm going to just ask, do you think the data center had anything to do with her price increase?
I don't know her specific situation. And I know she was not on a payment plan. But I do know that she had typically been paying around $120, $130 a month. And she got her bill started being higher and higher. And at the point that she had talked to me, it was almost $900. And her mortgage was like $830 or something like that.
Wow.
But I think that we're seeing that a lot. Anytime you're on any of the Facebook neighborhood pages, you will see people complain about these outrageous utility bills. And people are really, really struggling with it. People that have never had to struggle with paying their bills before are now suddenly being faced with, I've got to cut back on groceries so that I can keep my lights on. And we shouldn't be doing that, but we're doing that in a state that has been under a one-party rule for 20 years.
Yeah, 20 plus years. And life is not getting better. Like, I don't understand why people keep voting for people and their life is not getting better.
Right. And they're currently going to start parading that they cut property taxes, which is a farce because all the counties are going to have to start increasing all their taxes. So everyone is going to end up paying far more in taxes than they are getting from the property tax relief.
Yeah. And the municipalities are suffering. Like when you see Republican and Democratic mayors coming together saying, yo, excuse me, this bill is awful. You shouldn't pass it. And here's why. I even saw an article where a school corporation will be insolvent by 2029. And this is in rural Indiana, not in urban Indiana, but in rural Indiana.
This affects everything. Your policing, your fire, your EMS. It affects everything. You know, counties are now scrambling to figure out, how are we going to not just grow as a community. We always want our communities to grow. We want to see, our police paid well. We want to see our firemen paid and staffed well. We want EMS services. We want good schools. At this point, they're looking at just maintaining rather than growing. And even to maintain, they're going to have to increase our taxes drastically at the county level. And it's that measly, I think, up to $300 that you can save with property taxes is going to mean nothing.
It's not going to mean
because
anything.
You're going to be paying more.
I'm glad you shared your story of how you transitioned from the Libertarian Party to the Democratic Party, because I know that a lot of times people will, they think they got some gotchas, right? Oh, she's a libertarian. Well, when you know more, you grow and you change, right? Stupid is when you keep learning more and then don't change your behaviors, right? And so you saw that, I find it interesting that the age of consent was the straw. That means they don't want you nowhere near them Epstein files. They don't want you nowhere near them.
Right. But it was just an insane argument. And the party, and I was just surprised at how long that argument went on without, people in the upper offices saying, no, absolutely not. We're not having this discussion.
That's because
But
they probably
after
spent some
that,
time on that Epstein Island and want to get back to that sunshine. That's all. But so they can be with Prince Andrew.
even
They
our
can.
new chair did a speech in front of the Russian flag. So
What? Oh yeah, yeah. You had to leave that. So I'm glad you shared that story, so people won't be sitting around thinking that you have infiltrated the Democratic
no,
Party. Your values seem to align more with it. And I'm not saying that you agree 100% with everything that's on the platform. You may differ with a thing here and there, but you're saying like, no, my values do not align with what I was before.
right.
I've grown and I've changed. So let's
And
talk
I
about.
see,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I see a lot of people, when I see people kind of come to their senses and
Mm.
they start questioning, what have I done? Trump supporters even, what have I done? What have I voted for? I can't believe I did this. And they start questioning that. And then immediately you will see in the comments going, no, you're not getting off this easy. No, you're a horrible person. How are you going to atone for this? And I find that disheartening, and I
Me too.
really wish that would stop, because I think that coming up, especially in this election, you're going to see a lot of people looking for an out, looking
Mm-hmm.
for, I can't believe I did this. I've come to my senses. I'm not voting for this anymore. And I think that I hope that people are in the party are there to say, welcome in.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's
especially since
leave
we
it at
call
that.
ourselves the big tent party. I mean,
Right.
Malcolm X talked about it. We all arrive at our place at different times. We all start our journeys in different places, but
Mm-hmm.
once you get here, if you're ready to go to work, let's go to work. Like
Go to work.
I get that. I get that. So let's dive into, we understand why you're in the Democratic Party now. And I didn't even know that you ran as a libertarian. Didn't know. Did not know. But let's talk about what got you into wanting to run for this office at this time in 2026.
Well, I think we're at a point where we have an opportunity to break the 20-year rule from one party rule in Indiana. I think that Democrats have a great opportunity to get their foot in the door and at the very least stop the supermajority.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, when you have that opportunity and you see the way things are going with utility costs, and you see, if I get in there, I may be able to make a difference in this area. I, I, why don't you? I mean, it's crazy, and maybe you won't get elected. So the worst that happens is you're right back where you started,
Mm-hmm.
and you keep fighting. But to sit here, and for me to just sit here and complain and complain and complain about everything that's happening and not do something, not try to do something, I think kind of makes me lazy, hypocrite,
Mm.
whatever. I need to, if you see something is wrong, you got to get in and you got to try to fix it.
I agree, and there's also that mentality out there of let's just blow it all up.
Hmm.
I'm not a blow it all up kind of person. I'm gonna let me get inside and see how I can tinker with it and make it better. Because if you blow it all up,
Right,
you don't know if what comes behind it is actually going to be better.
right.
Ask the Cubans.
Or much worse. Yeah,
Ask the Venezuelans.
exactly.
You don't know if what comes behind it is worse. So I'd rather get in, and I appreciate you doing that. And we need more voices from varying places. Do you think that maybe because of your rural upbringing and small town feel that you would be able to maybe cross over and try to get some leverage, or not necessarily leverage, be able to work across the aisle a little bit?
I think so, because I think that we all have a common ground in the fact that we are struggling under higher cost of living, higher bills, less job opportunities. We're all dealing with that, and especially in these rural areas where job opportunity is much worse than in the city areas. We all know what it's like to struggle in these areas, I think, and I can't. fully able to talk to people that struggle because, I grew up in a
Mm-hmm.
family that struggled. I struggled a lot. And, I also grew up in a family of Republicans who are still very Republican, and I'm still very much able to get along with them
Wow.
and to talk with them. I can sit down at the table with my stepdad and my mom and have a discussion with them that doesn't end in us wanting to kill each other.
Wow.
It still ends in us loving each other, and it still ends in us wanting the best for each other. And I think that we're kind of losing sight with that in politics because of politics now. We're losing relationships. We're calling our family members ridiculous names because of politics, and I I don't behave like that, and I know how to talk to people that believe differently than me without degrading them and making them or treating them like they're stupid or something, because I don't think they're stupid. They just have a different understanding of how government should work.
I like the way you say that. They don't think they're stupid. I'm just gonna leave that there. I'm just gonna leave that there. And
I don't
and
think they're stupid. They just have a different idea of how government should work.
I get it.
And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, Gary's back there. Yeah.
Tell Gary to sit down. We already did our interview. Um, another thing is I have to say I'm really glad that in my African American household there's not a lot of in fact there are no Republicans in my close worldview, so I don't even have to worry about that. I have that conversation sometimes with my coworkers around holiday season because I work at Act Blue, so all of my coworkers are very liberal progressive like me, and they go home for the holidays and they're like, ugh, I have to do this. So, but you're sharing with us how you were able to navigate that, and I think we need that because politics is about compromise, right? And you're saying that
it definitely is, and so is governing, I think.
Yeah, I love that.
I think we've lost a lot sight of that too. Governing is also about compromise, and both sides. And I think Republicans and Democrats alike need to be able to compromise. And I'm asking for the vote of people that, I will do my best to compromise when I can.
Right.
And
find common ground. Guys, if you are liking what Pepper is talking about, make sure you click on her donate link. It's right there in the live feed. Just click on the donate link, become a $10 donor or become a $10 a month donor. Okay. So in order for her to have success in this race, she's going to need the resources. I know that, everyone's struggling as much as they can, but don't think of it as giving money to Pepper's campaign. Think of it as investing in your community by sending someone to the State House who's going to be looking out for you and everyday folk. So one of the things you talked about, Pep, I'm sorry, that was just me because I'm a Salt and Pepper fan, and they used to call him Pep. But anyway, I'm sorry, Pepper.
I was called Pep in high school.
Okay.
It works.
I didn't ask for approval for that, so I'm good. One of the things that we've touched on a little bit is affordability, and the State House has a tendency to think that affordability only, or the lack of affordability only lies in our urban areas. When you get to the State House, can you tell us how you plan to have real conversations about how we address affordability?
Well, I think that the main thing right now is utility bills. Democrats attempted to address utility bills with this last data center debacle with the amendments to exempt us from the 7% sales tax that the data centers receive. And also they tried to prevent an increase of, I think, over 3% a year. And Democrats tried, introduced amendments to stop that. And what happened? Those amendments were thrown out, which tells you that that one rule party just doesn't give a crap how you're struggling. They don't care that you're paying that 7% sales tax. They don't care if your utilities increase over 3% each year. They don't care. And I mean, data centers, they care about them.
They care about them. They care about profit. They care about profit.
and even communities are not going to be able to have input in whether or not those data centers are going up and whether or not they are, balancing protections for water and energy. The whole development of it, they don't bring a lot of jobs to the area. I mean,
Not
the
at
one that
all.
they're
Yeah.
building in Logansport, they're touting it's gonna employ 300 people. First of all, that's a lot of bull.
Right.
Those 300 people are just to get the center up and
Up and
going.
going. Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, most of those people they're bringing in from another country even to
Mm-hmm.
get that set up and going. And then those people go home and they're not there anymore. And then they bring in specialized workers who don't live locally. A lot of them work remotely. And so that's not a big employment,
It's not.
a big job number for that local community. And that needs to be addressed. We've got a one party rule that does not care what you think. They don't care that you're struggling. And the reason that they don't care is because we never hold them accountable. And it's
Bull.
kind of holding them accountable.
That's it. That's it. So you also mentioned your youngest daughter had some struggles as she was growing up, and congratulations that she's going to be graduating high school, and congratulations to you as parents for advocating for their success. But talk about how you see healthcare in Indiana and what we need to be doing better.
Well, I would love to. First of all, we need to not be shutting down maternity wards and hospitals. We need to fully fund Medicaid. We need to stop cutting Medicaid. And, we talk about my opponent, especially, loves to talk about abortion. They always come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't afford to have a baby right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling us to have baby after baby, bring babies into the world. That's great. My husband and I have 7 kids. We're very Catholic in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, my kids are going on to have kids now, and they are struggling. I worked for Family and Social Services for 12 years. I investigated food stamp fraud and Medicaid fraud. And I left my job and I went on to work for the state on the state side of that instead of the vendor. But I left my job, but my kids were struggling to pay childcare.
Mm-hmm.
And, they had their babies. They did what the Republicans wanted them to do. They had their babies. They made families. They got married. And now they're struggling to feed those kids, to get
Right.
childcare so that they can work to feed those kids.
Right.
And, I don't know how we can call ourselves pro-life if you're pro-life while we're also cutting all those services that make it possible for a struggling mom to bring a baby into the world and not abort her baby.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we call ourselves pro-life when we're also doing that? And so that's I'm losing my voice.
That's all right. Take a sip. This will give me a chance to just kind of like echo that. Like, they're not actually pro-life; they're pro-birth, and we've heard the same,
Right.
over and over again. Let's go into, because see, now we got them here. We got the babies here, right? Except that we're cutting maternity wards. And I my last guest, Mary Allen, I had on for running for Congress 2026. Go check those out too, y'all. She talked about cutting maternity wards, and we talked about how you're begging for people to have babies, but the mother may die before she can have the baby because you're cutting maternity wards, and it's not just about the delivering of the baby; it's the maternal care. I ain't never been pregnant. What y'all call that? Prenatal care. That's it. The prenatal care. If those OBGYNs are not in communities, how are these people getting what they need? And it's such a sad state. But then once they're born, let's talk about education. Our state, talk to me about your vision or how you see public education in Indiana. I'm not even going to lead it. I'm just going to let you go because you are good at this.
Well, I think that we need to fully fund public education. I mean, we constantly talk about, our education. I mean, Republicans in general are constantly telling us that our schools are horrible and that's why kids need to go to private school. Fine. How do we make our schools better? How do we make them better? Well, first of all, we need to pay our teachers. Our teachers are living almost in poverty wages here in the state of Indiana. We are vastly underfunding schools. We are forcing the cost of schools onto counties to try to make up the difference. And then counties try to get referendums voted in so that they can put a new roof onto the school. And people are already being overtaxed from other issues. And so no one's going to vote for extra money coming out of their check. So I think I would like to see a lot of public school funding to go onto the burden of the state instead of, the county and property taxes, and fund it that way. And then you would have, equal education, and instead of a say Carmel schools, a huge school, they get whatever they want down there. Westfield. And then we've got a school up here who needs a new roof.
Right.
And meanwhile, they've got a big giant campus down there with, fast food restaurants in their cafeteria and everything. And so I think that, it's very unequal funding, and it's not helpful to kids in poverty areas who are already struggling to also then go to a school that's underfunded.
Yeah. And so what's so bad, and what's so bad about it is they're literally taking money from public schools to subsidize parents' private education when they weren't going to actually send their kid to a public school anyway. So they're getting like a $7,000 coupon, right? And then you're talking about these schools that are struggling.
And there's no income limit on that. So Elon Musk can move into the state of Indiana and send
don't curse us like that. What are you doing?
Send his 12 kids to a private school on, the taxpayer dime.
Get a coupon.
That alone right there should be something that Republicans and Democrats should be able to compromise on, is that the Elon Musks of the world should have to pay for their own private school.
I think so. So, we touched on data centers for a minute, but I would like to expand that conversation to talk about Indiana's infrastructure. We still have communities in rural Indiana that don't have really good high-speed internet. And we are consistently deregulating our wetlands to create these data centers. There's a storm rolling through, y'all. So if we get lost, we still here. But talk about how we have lagged behind in maintaining and upgrading Indiana's infrastructure, or how you feel about it. I just led that. I'm sorry.
Well, look who's been running the state for 20 years. It's the same party. It's doing the same thing over and over again, cutting everything. And they don't think about what they're cutting. It's across the board cuts. They don't address the fact that our roads are crumbling. They don't address the fact that counties are now, with their property tax debacle that they're doing, counties are now going to have to cut road funding. And I think our county in general may have to cut, I think they were doing 5 projects a year. They're going to have to cut it down to 2, something crazy like that. So you're going to see, especially coming up, if they get this property tax the way they want it to be, you're going to see that, deteriorate even more, because counties are going to have less money to work with, and they're already scrambling to find out how they can simply maintain what they have now. And so the answer is not to continue cutting, it's to continue funding. It's to make sure counties have enough money to fund the road projects they need with their population growth. And when we fund roads and when we fund infrastructure, then you see people come in and you see more taxpayers come in. And when you don't fund those things, you don't see that. We don't have great population growth in Huntington County or Indiana in general. No. And a lot of that is because of infrastructure.
Yeah. You know what? It is obvious to me that you are a candidate who is fully aware of what is happening in Indiana. Like there was not a top. I imagine you and I could talk for another 2 hours, and you would be able to educate me like you've been educating me all night about all the different things that are happening. And I am really grateful that you are now running as a Democrat. So you can come on over here and help us win. And no, we can win together, right? I'm
Right.
excited about your campaign, and I got to tell you, when I saw the excitement that Christine Bohm put out in your announcement, I knew this was going to be a good thing. Not to mention, I'm crazy about Gary. Gary and I've been rocking for years now. We've been rocking for 10 years. Right. And so welcome in. I'm a Democrat that is welcoming you in, and I'm glad you're on the ballot. I'm excited that you're running. And it is obvious you are fully aware of what is going on in that state house, that you are in the office that you're running for, and the impact that you can have when you get elected. We've come to like the end of the show, though. Like me and you can talk all night. Tell people where they can find you.
I'm on all the social media, Pepper for Indiana. I think on Facebook, it's Pepper Snyder for state representative. I'm hoping I'll have my full voice back here pretty soon, but I'm just getting over a virus. But I'm also on TikTok. I believe it's Pepper for 50. Twitter, which we don't use a lot because Twitter is not very specific to your region. It's more just a bunch of trolls from, I don't know, Utah yelling at you. But we are on Twitter. We do put things up occasionally there. And but mostly we'll be on Facebook, and we hope to be meeting a lot of different people. We met with the mayor of Huntington today, and we're hoping to get a meeting with the mayor of Wabash and do some other things, and hopefully a fundraiser pretty soon.
Okay. And so people will be able to go to your website and volunteer, sign up to be a volunteer, because you're going to need the help. And guys, again, I'm telling you, donate to her campaign. It's an investment in your community. It's an investment in rural Indiana when you have somebody that actually understands what's happening in your community. And she knows what's happening at the State House. And so when she gets there, she is going to be able to really advocate for your needs and not continue to allow them to stack up chips and underfund the things that we need just so they can have a AAA rating and have $3 billion of surplus.
And I am very open to Republicans for discussion. I think we can all learn something from each other.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. Pepper Snyder, running for State Representative, District 50. All right, don't go anywhere just yet. All right, y'all. I'm always excited when I can talk about, let me switch over here to my rant screen, and we could talk about it's Black History Month. And today's Black History subject was so easy to talk about because we lost a giant this week in Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson, born 1941. We lost him this week, and he was there on the Lorraine balcony when Dr. King was shot. So I'm going to read to you from Black Past. You guys know that's where it's the encyclopedia where you can find information about African Americans and Africans from all of the Black diaspora. Because even though, this current white Christian nationalist supremacy BS thinks that they can scrub us from history, there's a place where our history lives. So this was a contributing by H. Viscount Nelson. Long before he became a minister, head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Operation Breadbasket, Operation Push, People United to Save Humanity, and founder of the Rainbow Coalition, Jesse Louis Jackson impressed his family and close friends as a person destined for greatness. Born Jesse Burns in Greenville, South Carolina on October 8th, 1941, to Helen Burns and a 17-year-old unwed high school student and Noah Robinson, her older married neighbor, young Jesse took the surname Jackson from his adoptive father, Charles Jackson, who later married Burns. Insecure because of the circumstances of his birth, Jackson decided to become a father figure and a leader for his people. Tall and imposing at 6'4", Jackson became a star high school quarterback and earned a football scholarship at the University of Illinois in 1959. After 1 year at Illinois, he transferred to North Carolina Agricultural and Technology at North Carolina A&T University in Greensboro. North Carolina, partly because he was not allowed to play quarterback, and at A&T, Jackson used his oratorical skills and charismatic charismatic personality to become the student body president. Encouraged to test his leadership skills, Jackson led his first march to downtown Greensboro in 1962. Jackson pledged Omega Psi Phi fraternity while at A&T under the guidance of A&T President Dr. Samuel Proctor. Jackson enrolled at the Chicago Theological Seminary to train for the ministry. Jackson was ordained a Baptist minister in 1968, although he left the seminary 2 years early to work full-time in the civil rights movement. Jackson's introduction to the movement came in 1965 when he traveled to Selma, Alabama to join the campaign for voting rights. While there, Jackson met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the man who would launch his career as a national civil rights leader. Through King's influence, Jackson quickly established himself prominently within King's organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. When SCLC launched its first Northern campaign in Chicago in 1966, Jackson was put in charge of his Operation Breadbasket, which used boycott and selective buying campaigns to win contracts for Black businesses and jobs for Black workers. During the years Jackson headed Operation Breadbasket from 1966 to 1971, the campaign generated over 3,000 jobs for Southside Chicago residents and increased the area's income by $22 million. Despite its success, Jackson and Reverend Ralph Abernathy, Dr. Martin Luther King's successor of SCLC, clashed. In 1971, Jackson left the organization and founded Operation Push, where he continued his campaign for economic empowerment. By early 1980, Jackson had acquired a national reputation as a racial justice advocate. That reputation has enhanced when, in 1983, he traveled to Syria and made a dramatic personal appeal to Syrian President Hafez al-Assad to secure the release of a captured American pilot, Navy Lieutenant Robert Goodman, who had been shot down over Lebanon. In June of 1984, Jackson traveled to Havana and met with the Cuban president, Fidel Castro, to negotiate the release of 22 Americans being held by Castro's government. In 1984, following the success of his Syria mission, Jesse Jackson mounted the second major effort by an African American, after Shirley Chisholm, of course, in 1972, to seek the Democratic nomination for president of the United States. He and his followers adopted the term Rainbow Coalition to describe the broad coalition of groups of color, working poor, gays and lesbians, and white progressives that Jackson hoped would propel him to the nomination and eventually to the White House. Despite controversial anti-Semitic remarks made during the campaign, Jackson ran a surprisingly strong race, winning primaries in 5 states, including Michigan. Jackson earned 21% of the primary vote, but gained only 8% of the delegates and ultimately lost the nomination to former Vice President Walter Mondale. Jackson mounted a second effort in 1988, this time winning more than 7 million primary votes across the nation in another failed attempt to win the nomination. After winning the South Carolina primary, finishing second in Illinois primary, and winning the Democratic caucus in Michigan, Jackson briefly emerged as a leading contender. Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis recaptured the lead with wins in Colorado, Wisconsin primaries, forcing Jackson to drop out of the race. Jesse Jackson did not make another bid for presidential nomination until and since 1992, his function as a power broker within the Democratic Party. In 1990, he won the largely ceremonial position of District of Columbia's statehood senator, a platform which he argued for statehood for the nation's capital. In 1997, Jackson launched the Wall Street Project, which encouraged African Americans to become stockholders to use their leverage to force changes in corporate culture and behavior. 2 years later, Jackson engaged in personal diplomacy once again when, during the Kosovo War, he traveled to Belgrade to meet with new Serbian President Milosevic, where he secured the release of 3 more U.S. prisoners of war. And in 1999, he brokered a ceasefire in war-ravaged Sierra Leone. Both his supporters and critics describe Jackson as bold, defiant, and controversial. He has received praise for inspiring the poor with speeches punctuated by catchphrases such as, "I am somebody," and "keep hope alive." Critics, however, blame Jackson for mounting blatantly self-promoting campaigns that exploited racial grievances and inflamed racial outrage. The revelation that Jackson, married since 1962, fathered a child in 2001 with Rainbow Coalition staffer, sullied his well-crafted public image as a moral leader. Nevertheless, Jesse Jackson remained enormously popular both in the United States and abroad. Reverend Jesse Jackson died on February 17th, 2020, at the age of 84, closing a career that reshaped modern civil rights activism and Black political life. Guys, we wouldn't have had Barack Obama if not for Jesse Jackson. And there wouldn't have been a Jesse Jackson without a Shirley. But as we say thank you to his service in pushing the needle and inspiring the next generation, in the midst of all this chaos, we recognize over and over again that we have people who have been the stalwarts for our community, who have shown up for Black folks and advocated for our inclusion in this society, but also representing the United States with honor. He went overseas and did good work. He didn't go overseas like the orange clown that we have right now, embarrassing ourselves and tripping over himself and making the United States look bad. He went over there with the diplomacy and was able to negotiate. And the question is, why haven't people actually dove into why Jesse Jackson was so successful to go in places and negotiate the release of our prisoners? No one seems to want to study that. Nobody. They should. Somebody should be working on their PhD right now, understanding how Jesse Jackson was able to have that kind of diplomacy overseas, an African-American born to an unwed 17-year-old. Your life is not defined by where you start. It's what you do in the dash between the end. And Jesse Jackson made the most of the life that he was given. He did that to improve the lives of every African-American in the United States. And so to him, I say, I tip my hat and a job well done. Rest well, good and faithful servant. Y'all, that's my show for tonight. I will holler at y'all next time. Peace. Turn Left is the property of Black Pearl IT Solutions, executive producer, Indiana's own Dana Black. Music by Dorianin22 from Pixabay.